very grateful to the Academy for accepting my donation and for their commitment to preserving my collection and making it accessible for future generations. And I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. So here we are in the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences under the Oscars celebrating kung-fu films for the 40th anniversary of Enter the Dragon, hosted by the Academy. You must all be incredibly psyched to be witnessing this. I mean, this is kind of a remarkable thing. I want to take just a minute to try to put this in a little historical and cultural perspective. I would say probably over the age of 5, everyone in the world today knows who Bruce Lee is. Everybody knows what Kung Fu is. I've seen people in the most remote corners of the earth pulling Kung Fu moves and making Bruce Lee sounds. I've been to places like Sadr City in Baghdad and rural Transylvania where people have never seen an Asian person before, and little kids will run up to me and say, "Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee." When you watch The Matrix and they take the plug out of the back of Neo's head and he says, "I know Kung Fu," we all know what that means. But 45 years ago, just before all these posters that you've seen and before this movie was made, no one outside of Chinatown or martial arts circles knew what Kung Fu was. And Bruce Lee was just another martial arts teacher, an out-of-work TV actor whose show was canceled, struggling to make a living. So what happened? Within 5 years, Kung Fu had exploded onto our cultural landscape. There was a TV series, there were disco songs, bubblegum cards, there was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon on Saturday morning, Elvis did martial arts on stage. As one of our panelists here said, suddenly there was a Kung Fu studio in every small town in America. Parents took their kids to martial arts on Saturday morning like they were taking them to baseball practice. This all seems really normal to us all now, but this was completely new and strange in 1973. Kung Fu films didn't just change the way Hollywood worked, how we made action films, how we perceived and marketed foreign films. They also changed the way this country looked at Asians and all minorities. In the 1960s, we were still making yellow-face movies in Hollywood. Mickey Rooney played a caricature Japanese in Breakfast at Tiffany's with big fake buck teeth and a crazy accent. Christopher Lee was still playing the insidious, evil Dr. Fu Manchu. Tony Randall played Dr. Lau with his eyes taped up, mincing around with the fake, Q. And Bruce Lee played a butler. He was a kick-ass Kung Fu butler, but still, he was relegated to the role of a Chinese butler. So, butlers, buffoons, insidious villains, this was kind of the lay of the land for Asian American actors. Now, if you go downstairs afterwards and you see the poster for the re-release of Green Hornet when it was cut together into a movie and released in 1974 after Enter the Dragon, you'll see that 10 years after the TV series, Bruce Lee now gets top billing. Bruce Lee's name is huge. It's like a third of the size of the poster. There are 3 Bruce Lees in the poster, and Van Williams is about this big. So what happened in those 5 years? The simple answer, and history is not always simple, but the simple answer is that Bruce Lee happened. Bruce Lee didn't invent the Kung Fu film. Chinese filmmakers have been making Kung Fu films since the silent film era. You could say that martial arts films are to China and to Hong Kong what Westerns are to America and Hollywood. It's the genre that is uniquely Chinese. It particularly embodies Chinese ideals and culture. Bruce Lee, I'm sure you all know, was actually a pretty big child star in Hong Kong, in the Hong Kong film industry. But it was his hope and dream to become a global star in Hollywood. And for those of us in this room, in this business, I think what is particularly interesting is that Hollywood couldn't figure out what to do with Bruce Lee. When Bruce Lee said he wanted to be a bigger star than his friends James Coburn and Steve McQueen, they laughed at him. Not to his face, but they laughed at him. Bruce Lee knew all these people. He knew people at the very center of our business. He knew the biggest movie stars in the world. He knew film producers. He knew the head of a major studio, Warner Brothers. I don't know if you know this, but Roman Polanski hired Bruce Lee to be his fitness trainer. These people respected his talents. They recognized his charisma, but there was a belief, and it's amazing because it's actually memorialized in internal memos, that there was simply no way a person of color could ever be a movie star, a major box office draw. That's not the most remarkable thing about the story. I think the most remarkable thing is that Bruce Lee, despite this, persevered, endured, and found a way to show his talent to the world. In 1972, Raymond Chow, the owner of Golden Harvest, hired a foreign sales rep to take the first two Bruce Lee films, The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, to Cannes. He knew he had something special, and he wanted to sell foreign rights. But that year, they had only one buyer, a distributor in Lebanon. So the first people who saw Bruce Lee outside of Hong Kong in those films were people in Beirut. In 1972, on the eve of the Civil War, for 2 weeks in 2 theaters. If you go downstairs, I think we have one of the 2 surviving posters downstairs. The next year, the same sales agent came back to Cannes. He told me that there were so many people trying to buy the Bruce Lee films that they had to buy a circus tent because there were hundreds of people trying to beat a pass to their door. He said to me that a young kid named Bob Shea begged him to sell the US rights. A kid in his 20s, but a major studio beat him out. So Bob Shea had to go buy a Japanese film that he called The Street Fighter when he released it here to launch his new company, New Line. Posters downstairs too, along with the original Bruce Lee posters from Hong Kong. The huge success of the Bruce Lee films in Asia and then around the world caused Hollywood to take notice. And to Hollywood's credit, they did what Hollywood does best. They instantly changed course 180 degrees, showed Bruce their love, and got ahead of the wave. So Warner Brothers reached out to Raymond Chow and to Bruce Lee to do a co-production, which will become the movie you're going to see tonight, Enter the Dragon. There were variety stories about Hollywood producers crowding the flights to Hong Kong with suitcases full of money, looking for film rights to acquire. And overnight, and this is amazing, between 1972 and 1973, nearly 20% of the films released in American theaters were kung-fu films. Quickly dubbed kung-fu films, some of which were unbelievably bad. And I'm sure you've all seen them. But a whole new genre was born, at least for America, right? The martial arts film, the action film. And I think also, action films in America would never be the same again. It's so long ago now that maybe some of you don't remember what fights used to look like in Hollywood films. But if you watch Star Trek and you see Captain Kirk fighting big puppet aliens and foam costumes and flailing around, John Wayne was still an action star in 1972-73 with McHugh. And if you see those fake punches and the air whiffs and people stumbling around, I mean, it looks like mimes, jumping around, fighting each other. After Bruce Lee, there was no way anybody could ever sell that kind of fighting again. There are a lot of stories about this moment in time. Your panelists will probably tell you a few, but I want to just share one with you that I found in the Warner Brothers archives. If you look at the picture of the Warner Brothers marketing department in 1973, it looks like the cast of the Lawrence Welk Show. It was like Opie and Harriet at Warner Brothers, and they were tasked with releasing these new movies that came from Hong Kong that were in Chinese, that had guys jumping around and screaming and hacking each other. They had no idea what to do with it. And in the file, in the marketing file, I found a clipping from the New York Times about a Warner Brothers screening in Harlem of Five Fingers of Death. During the film, someone came into the theater with a .22 pistol and tried to rob the concession stand. And 5 members of the audience, incredibly amped up after seeing their first kung-fu, ran out, beat the guy up, unarmed, took his gun away from him, and held him until the police arrived. The best thing, the punchline for me, is the Warner Brothers marketing department put a note in the clipping saying, "What do we do with this? Should we release a press release? Is this a press release? Should we call in the press about this?" The most profound change, I think, for me, and the reason why I collected these posters, particularly through the 70s and 80s when they were being thrown out and no one was particularly interested in hanging on to them, particularly the non-Bruce Lee ones, is that they really made Americans reassess how we look at Asian Americans and at minorities. Bruce Lee became an inspiration not just to me, but to generations of young minority actors, musicians, filmmakers, martial artists, not just because of his physical mastery, but because of his powerful defiance, his innate dignity, his grace, and his passion. Bruce Lee refused to be belittled, he refused to be marginalized, and he refused to be dismissed. He commanded our attention, he commanded the frame, he demanded respect. He had a power and magnetism that few people have ever had. Today, 45 years later, if I showed a picture of Steve McQueen or James Coburn or those kids in Saddler City, they would have no idea who they were. But if I showed them a picture of Bruce Lee with his nunchucks from Enter the Dragon, they would all say, Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee. This is why I love kung fu films. Many of them are terrible. Many of them are comically bad and enjoyable for that reason. Very few of them rise to the level of the film you're about to see tonight. But kung fu films changed America, and they changed the world. So I want to say thank you, Bruce Lee. Thank you, the producers of Enter the Dragon. Thank you, the Hong Kong film industry and Warner Brothers. All the kung fu practitioners who toiled in obscurity and suffered making these films. And I want to thank the Academy for preserving these posters from this very special moment in our history. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That was terrific. You've all been handed a printed program that lists the biographies and credits of some of our guests. So in the interest of time, because I know we all want to get to the film, I will only mention the bio of our last guest because he is not in your program. But first, if you will do me a favor and welcome one of the producers of Enter the Dragon, Paul Heller. Take the second seat. Another producer of Enter the Dragon, Mr. Fred Weintraub. Fred? The cinematographer of Enter the Dragon, Mr. Gilbert Hubbs. He plays O'Hara in the film, Mr. Bob Wall. He stars as Roper in the film, Mr. John Saxon. We're very honored to have a member of Bruce Lee's family here, his daughter, Shannon. Our next guest has written more than 100 scores for film and television, has won 4 Grammy Awards with 21 nominations and 6 Oscar nominations for Cool Hand Luke, The Fox, Voyage of the Damned, The Amityville Horror, and The Competition, and The Sting, 2, rather. Please welcome Mr. Lalo Schifrin. So Shannon, I think 4 years ago you were just a wee tot, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes, my credit would be the 4-year-old that was running around on the set.
Looking back all these years, your father died when you were very young, and yet he lives on in this legacy. What does that bring to you and your family?
You know, it's really phenomenal, and it's such an absolute gift to me and to so many other people. When I travel the world, so many people, you know, everywhere, they know who my father is, and they've been touched in some way, inspired in some way, or just excited in some way. And it's such a blessing and amazing, really. I mean, you know, I now work doing things for the legacy through my foundation and through our licensing business and that sort of thing. But honestly, I mean, for 40 years, it's been going on without and needing any help from me, really. And I'm just so amazed and so inspired on a daily basis. And it's really why I want to do what I do in keeping the legacy alive, because I'm inspired by it. If, you know, there hadn't been that depth of philosophy behind it, if there hadn't been so much more to it and so much authenticity to it, I don't know that I'd be doing what I'm doing today. But I feel absolutely blessed and absolutely empowered to continue the message of his life.
Paul and Fred, I want to start with you so that if we could go back a little bit. I mean, Stephen kind of painted the picture a little bit for us, but I think it really is hard for us to really remember, and certainly for those younger who weren't around in 1973, it's really almost impossible to believe how incredibly singular this film was and what a breakthrough it was. Can you talk a little bit about the struggles you guys had to get this film made and to get it on the screen?
I'd like to correct a little bit of the history. Bruce, we ran into, Freddie has the greatest eye for talent of any human being I know. Fred ran into Bruce. Bruce, we were both executives at Warner Brothers at the time. Sterling Silliphant, James Coburn, all kept telling us about Bruce Lee. Fred had the insight to develop a screenplay for him called Way of the Tiger, Sign of the Dragon, which ended up as the TV series Kung Fu, but it was written for Bruce. Nobody would pay it any mind. We saw, I mean, Freddie, you have to talk about this too. We saw the success that Bruce gave up in Hollywood. He was just in despair. He couldn't get arrested. Went back to Hong Kong with Raymond and did 2 pictures that turned him into bigger than the Beatles, bigger than Elvis. And Freddie, again, said, okay, let's finally do something with Bruce. And we did. We came together. We put together a story. We hired a young writer, Michael Allen, who's sorry he's not here tonight. And we came up with a screenplay for Bruce. And, nobody was interested in it except us. But Freddie went over to Hong Kong and convinced Bruce to make it in spite of Raymond Chow. Raymond was having such a success with his Chinese films with Bruce, he didn't want him to do an international film because he thought it might diminish his stature if it wasn't good. So you take it, Freddie.
Firstly, you got to separate the picture and Bruce Lee in a funny way. Bruce was a shooting star, was magnificent. He had that charisma. Somewhere in it, you could tell that something was going to happen with him. It wasn't happening. He was having a lot of problems and a lot of difficulty. But the result was an unusual performance and something that we can't compare to today. As we heard from Steve and Jim, that all over the world when you talk about Bruce Lee. But the other part that goes to this is really for those people who are in this business and think that somehow it all is so easy and wonderful, and it really is. If you know absolutely nothing, and you keep pushing forward, and you have an idea, and you don't let anybody stop you, something happens. Bruce was a friend of mine. He tried. I had already had 2 people when I was in New York write the script, as Paul said, and it became kung-fu, and then I had written another script called Kelsey for Lee and a guy named
Woody Strode.
Woody Strode, right? And then Paul and I, who had gotten together, began to talk serious about this. And we got nowhere. And I tell you why we got nowhere, because he was an agent. And just, no, you looked at you with a blank eye. And luckily, the people who helped us are very much forgotten, but, and they're studio executives. I mean, there was Steve Ross, there was Ted Ashley, there was Dick Letter, the head of advertising. There was the distribution, remember? Dick Barr, who was really instrumental in helping us with the script and telling us why it's not releasable in Japan unless we take this out or take that out, and how much money. We actually made, what we had to do was get $200,000 from Warner Brothers. They didn't want any part of it. But when Bruce sent me, and I asked him, I said, go and make something I can show. He sent me just some of the action footage from the Big Boss, and I showed it to Ted Ashley, and he said, okay, get them part of it, you know. And when I went over to Hong Kong and talked to Bruce, Bruce was, of course, an enormous star by then. Raymond did not want to let him go. And he did, because Bruce was going to be an international star. I came back, and to all these blank stares, we had a script, we had everything going, but nobody wanted to make this picture. And finally, Ted Ashley gave us the okay. And Paul and I then started working hard on the script and brought Bruce here, and never did we know when the picture started to go. Bruce did all the stunts. He was not really involved in the making of the whole movie or the complete story. He did add parts of it which were good. But all of a sudden, a cinematographer never shot 35. Over here, Gil.
Yeah.
And Bob Klaus, a very underrated director. And the people from Warner Brothers, from Dick Letter of the advertising, and Leo Greenfield, they all had to adjust their minds to something that they didn't understand. And it was a very, very wild time. I mean, even when we were making it, there are hundreds of stories, and of course, you know, this is where everybody's got a million stories about Bruce. You know, it's like when I did Woodstock. I haven't met anybody yet who wasn't at Woodstock. So the answer is, but this picture, we made it for $300,000-$400,000, and they chipped in foreign, and we had something that was very helpful for us. We learned, Paul and I, how to deal with other countries and other people, and they were excellent, and they really helped, and that led to the fact that I know I could shoot all over the world. I shot in all the emerging nation countries. I shot 4 more pictures in our country. Paul shot all over the world. I mean, we learned to take advantage that people love films, and they were great artists all over the country. And one of the major things that made Enter the Dragon work was the score. Listen to the score. I turned around to, in those days, the way you listen, you had a composer, and he'd come over, play the piano, and go boom, 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 boom. How does that sound? And you'd shake your head as a producer and not know until finally you saw the whole orchestra and you could make a few comments. But with Lalo, I said, I want American music, but with a Chinese. No, I don't want a Chinese. I want American. Give me some idea. And it was so great that I used it in extra places, you know, all along the way, because it was so good. So everybody played a little part. There was like coming into a center with Bruce being this, you know,
Meteor.
and everybody around. The distribution guys, they had never distributed. I told them, let's go to New York and it'll be a big hit. They didn't want to open it. But Leo Greenfield went ahead and he did it, and the Dick Letters and Joe Himes.
The Dragon Parade.
They gave us a Dragon Parade, which would have never, and then it opened in Japan, and it did more business, all because Dick Marr had told me. Leave off any Japanese references. So you don't know how these happen.
Up until then, most Chinese films had a Japanese villain.
Yeah.
and we don't have a Japanese film. And it's the first.
And the hardest part we had was how do you make a movie with no guns? I mean, and you know that we sat around. I can only tell you we sat around 40 days trying to figure out how we can get an island. You know, whether and why would this island not be attacked? And but so those kind of things were fun. But what was nice was all the people who surrounded. And there was Andre Morgan and Hong Kong, and Raymond Chow, who was not allowed on the set eventually, but who was really very, very instrumental. Everybody participated. And of course, the stories of the movies being made, all these people can say.
Sure. Well, let's get some more of these stories. It's great. John, I'm interested in talking to you next because at the time this film was made, you were Stella Adler, studied under Stella. Am I right?
I had worked with Stella
Yes.
Adler, yeah.
So I mean, you were.
And Michael Chekhov as well.
Right. So you were a Class A actor.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And still very suave, I might add. Anyway, and I think you were kind of known for that, you know, very leading man type guy. So how did you come to this project, and what was your take on this
Well,
one?
I had been doing things like judo and Japanese karate and stuff like that. And eventually I began to seeing other kinds of things. And, some of you guys came and asked me to be in that film. And
We knew you had talent.
Yeah, thank you. But, you know, I had a moment when I decided, after I told you guys I was going to do the film, I called Fred, and I said, Fred, I'm not sure I want to do this. And there was the longest silence that I've ever heard from Fred. Anyway, it only lasted about 15 minutes when I decided back to do the film, luckily for me. And that's when I began to, I got an order from you guys at Warner Brothers to go over and do that film.
So what do you remember about the production, especially the fight sequences and things like that?
Well, the fight sequences, what we were doing, well, Bruce obviously helped me a good bit. And I would ask him, what do you think I try to do this kind of thing? He said, that's pretty good, try that. And we were working on that. He probably didn't mean it, but it worked well enough for the film, you know.
Was this an enjoyable film for you? Did you enjoy working on it?
Yeah, I want to tell you that, yeah, it was enjoyable. I'm writing some things here that I've written 15 years ago, 20 years ago, about Bruce and myself, you know. Yeah, if you can do that. But anyway, I don't know how far I can go with that kind of stuff. But, actually, one time I remember having a dream that I was walking to my car late at night, parked just below Hollywood Boulevard, and I had to put my key in to open the door, and then all of a sudden the guy jumped up behind me and had a gun at me, a very small gun, but he was pointing it to me, you know. And I was wondering what to say, and he said, "Give me those keys, or I'll." And then he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Man, you're John Saxon." What was it like working with Bruce Lee? Anyway.
So did you get out of it? Did he leave you alone then? Or did he continue to rob you, or did you?
It was a dream I had.
Oh, it was a dream, okay.
An
That's
actual
even better.
dream that had happened, you know? Yeah, those are those places that I'm telling you about. Well, anyway, when I got to Hong Kong, I was there with my wife and my son, who was not yet 2 years old. And the next day, I went to see Bruce, and he brought me into his house. He was waiting to see me, and we walked in, and I walked in to his house, and then I saw he had a gym. And I looked at it, and it reminded me of what I had a little bit of at my home, you know? And we began to talk this and that, and he was telling me things, what he could do with kettlebells and stuff, and things that I had little contact with at that time. And we kept going on and on and on, and then all of a sudden, he began to tell me, show me how you do your sidekick. And I said, okay, but I had done a scene at the park about 3 weeks or 4 weeks prior, where I had sprained my ankle. And I said, oh, well, all right, he's wanting to do this for me, I'll do it, you know. So all of a sudden, I threw a kick, and then he said, let me show how I do mine. And he did. he moved around with a chair, and I didn't know what he was doing, you know? I was looking over his shoulder like that, and all of a sudden, he stood in front of me for about 15 feet or something like that. And he did a hop, skip, and a jump, and hit out of back, you know? And he knocked me clear across on my heels like this, going into a chair like that. And the chair fell down and broke. And I got up, and I saw he was very kind of quiet and anxious about this. And I said, listen, it's okay. I mean, I didn't get hurt. He says, I know, but that's my best chair. And it was the same chair that he had everybody else do the same thing with me that I discovered later. You stand behind it, and then he'd kick, and you'd go back, and boom, you hit the chair. I had broken it. I was the only one that had broken it. Okay. Anyway,
So Gil, I'd like to talk to you because one of the things that's very interesting about this is it's shot on location, and you have also this incredible sequence with mirrors where it's a very cinematic sequence. And I just wanted to talk to you about how that was shot and how you worked with the director to make that work. It must have been a very challenging film for you. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
It was, but House was just a grand director, and he had a wonderful visual sense of thinking of things. And like the mirrored room, I'm not sure where the idea came from, the original idea. It didn't come from any movie, I know that. But Bob really enhanced it, and he also was tough, and we had a lot of problems. We could talk to you about problems for months, and there are a lot of funny stories, but Bob just powered through it. And also he was very good with Bruce. He listened to Bruce. He tried to understand what Bruce wanted to do, and then try to make it cinematic. And so the mirrored room was an idea, and we were in a restaurant one day, and we saw these vertical mirrors, and I think his wife was with us, and that came into the picture, and I think Paul designed the set. And so we got in it, and Bruce had given us a couple of days off. He was away, so Bob was able to work out some shots in there, and it was very confusing. You couldn't stay in the mirrored room for more than about 10 or 15 minutes, and when you were talking to somebody, you actually had to touch them, because Fred is sitting right here, but in the mirrored room, he wasn't. He was over there, and so a lot of us kind of got sick, you know, being in there too long. But Bob came up with this great idea to have the mirrored room, and well, we're going to see ourselves all over this, and he said, no, we'll build this closet right in the middle, put mirrors on the outside of it, and put the camera inside. And so we got in the closet, and we had a couple stand-ins, and things just started to happen. But it was very difficult to repeat them because you had no grounding. You'd be setting up the shot, and a head would come in. Oh, that'd be great. Just hit him, and the person would hit the other way. And so Bruce found it very difficult, and actually I think he hit the mirror a couple times and had to go away for a little bit more. He cut himself, but it was very confusing. But it actually, once we started shooting, it was easy. It was very hard, but the shots, there were a million shots in there.
Terrific. Well, I look forward to seeing it on the big screen again, so thank you for being with us. Bob? I want to ask you, you're one of, there's several, but you're one of the main villains in this piece, and I just wanted to ask you what that was like to be a villain in a Bruce Lee film, and how that has affected your life from since then, and talk about making the film.
Well, the strange part of it is that I love Bruce Lee, and we were really close friends for many, many, many years, over 10, and training partners. And I got 500 a week when I was making 10 to 12,000 a week in my real estate business. My wife of 44 years now said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "I just love Bruce. He's my first close Chinese friend. I can take these hits, and everybody's afraid of him. And I've been training with him. I can take the hits." And Bruce wanted to do everything real. He really, Freddie and Paul can tell you, Bruce got hurt a lot in this film. He got bit by the snake, he got hurt by the windows, he got cut with the glass scene with me. We're using real bottles. So my part in it was, I was really enjoying it. You don't see yourself as a bad guy, although my wife does. She thought it was a But what does she know after 44 years of married life? I'm a recovering whore for that long. But at any rate, I got a kick out of being his villain because I loved him so much, and because he wanted to do everything real. Bruce Lee was a genius, and we have a few on this panel. I mean, the producers, for sure, Gil, God, Lalo, unbelievable. John, this cast and crew was just amazing and fun to work with, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot because I felt I could make Bruce look better because he could really hit me. So for example, in the bottle scene, in real bottles, and people don't realize you break the bottles, I gotta fall in. I can't look down. I get cut. I ruined a lot of uniforms doing that scene. But Bruce said to me, "I want you to try to stab my right pec. I want you to take the right bottle, when you break it, I want you to stab my right pec." That was my job. That's what he told me. I'm like, okay. Well, I was trying to stab his right pec. I got successful, almost. But he was a genius. He was a brilliant martial artist. He was so accurate. He hit you exactly where he was supposed to. So I really enjoyed being the bad guy. Well, I'm going home thinking I'm the good guy, but no. And I've had so many people over the years say, "I hated you. I wanted you dead." Even Freddie said, I wanted him to kill you. He didn't want to hire me for the part in the beginning. But I really enjoyed doing it. I loved Bruce, and it's like my partner for 48 years is Chuck Norris, and they're both the same, Chuck and Bruce. And people say, "You've never missed a workout with either one of them." And I said, "No, why would you miss a painting lesson from Picasso?" Bruce was a genius, and he was a brilliant martial artist. And the thing I liked most people to know about him was he was so kind and funny. He was a magician. He was magic to be around. Intense, had a temper. Being Irish, I don't have one much either. But he was very loving and kind and intense. And I think Freddie and Paul and Linda, his widow, handled him so well. He was like a racehorse, you know. But I truly enjoyed the beatings he gave me. And we had this I'm 0-900 against my wife, and I'm not going for 901, but I say, all the Bruce Lee movies I did, you got to run them backwards so I get a draw. But Bruce was amazing to work with because he was such a professional. He hit you exactly where he was supposed to, exactly what he was supposed to. And so I really had a very, very good time being the villain. And I'm eternally glad that I did it because I think this is really, there's no question in my mind, it's the best martial arts film of all time. And it really, really, on the set, when John came, I was such a big fan, and I said, "Wow, that's a darn good actor. I mean, that's an amazing actor." I just was like, "Wow, we got John Saxon." And Anna Capri did a great part and was an excellent actress. But Freddie and Paul just did an amazing job of putting this whole thing together and then holding it together because Bruce was very nervous. And Gil, of course, I mean, I think he's just brilliant. Lalo, who's a martial artist, a black belt, and I think a genius. And so, and I looked at the whole cast and crew, Jim Kelly, who I hired, I brought into the film, and Freddie. So we really had an amazing group of actors and martial artists who pulled off what Freddie and Paul's dream was. And Bruce, of course, did his part, being the genius he was. He just was amazing. And God bless him for the 32 years we had him.
Great. Lalo, you are coming up last here, but also probably one of the last in the process of putting this together, bringing the music in. What do you remember of what your inspiration was? I mean, this is a very delicate balance to make a film that is coming out of Warner Brothers and yet at the same time wanted to have an authenticity for the Kung Fu spirit. So what was your process for this?
Well, please let me tell you first that Fred and Paul, they were interested in my service, my contribution to the film in musically, but I had an agent. A Hollywood agent who had to make the deal, and that was a problem. But I don't know how they solved the problem, and all of a sudden I was assigned to do the film. I was very, very happy about it. And I want to tell you that I'm never going to forget that particular date, because my son Ryan, who is in the audience now, he's a filmmaker. He did several films, including one that is a horror film called Abominable. And I did the music for that too. I remember that Brian was born exactly when I was supposed to start doing the music of Enter the Dragon. And that is a very great memory for me. So I waited until they finished the principal photography, the editing, and all of a sudden I went to spot it. I think I spotted with Fred and Paul. Spotting means the places, spots in the film where music is going to go. It's not wall to wall, although in this case it almost was. But it was, there are moments in the dialogue with sound effects and the music was taking care of not only the fights, but suspense, tension, getting to the fights, all the human problems that the music can contribute to. And we made the timings, and when I finally got the final timing, how much music is in this film, it was almost like 1 hour of music, which is quite a lot. I mean, in those days, and even today, I mean, 45 minutes of music in a film is quite a lot of music, and it would take normally between the composition and the orchestration and everything, it would take about several weeks to write the music for. I'm talking weeks in which you are working day and night. It's not just. It's not like a union job. It is, you have to be working with day and night. And this is more than 1 hour of music. And all of a sudden, Fred and Paul called me and said that Bruce wants to meet me. Bruce Lee wants to meet me and wants to have lunch with me. This is, wait, they have finished the principal photography, everything. That's why I could do the timings and all that. And they said, yeah, you have to come to the commissary. He was in Warner Brothers. And you have to talk to him. I said, well, I'm going to talk to him. I mean, we come from different cultures, and I don't know if I'm going to understand. I like very much martial arts, but I don't understand what we need to talk about. As a matter of fact, I said to Fred and Paul, this is your movie. And you already have the recording studio booked, the engineer who's going to record it, everybody, but all the musicians we have like close, in some places we have close to 100 musicians, symphony orchestra. And they were all called already, they had a date to come. And I said, you know, it takes me from Beverly Hills to Warner Brothers. It takes me at least 1 hour with the traffic and all that. And then to be there talking to Bruce, I don't know, maybe 2 more or 3 more hours. I'm wasting 4 hours of time that I need. It's your music, it's your movie. You need it. And without me, it cannot be done. So no, you have to do it because he's asking. So I went to the commissary, and I met Bruce Lee, and the first thing he did is touch here. It was iron. And he says, and he told me the whole story, how martial arts, he told me, started in India, with the monks needed, when they were going to the countryside, they were being attacked by bandits. And they developed what they call the empty hands form of self-defense. And then that form took, this is 5,000 years ago. See, that made an evolution going from India to China. They got several other forms like kung-fu, and then he went to Korea, Shotokan, Taekwondo. They went to Japan, karate, and he said to me, Bruce, he said, I made possible these changes. My techniques are beyond. I going beyond all those techniques, and I incorporate the best, and I make it a different kind of art, a different kind of martial art. So I said, oh, then we have something in common. Yeah, because the classical music I studied comes from Europe, 2,000 years, and I also went beyond.
Certainly did. You most certainly did.
Yeah.
And we'll hear that tonight, I think.
Well, obviously, Bruce liked very much that, and that was it. And then,
Fantastic.
of course, I was shown the movie and all the things. When somebody said, how is it possible? How did you write the music of this? How can you explain that? But on the other hand, yes, you can explain when you have somebody like Bruce Lee, with his energy, and the way the movie was made by all these people here, the way the movie was made, it was contagious, the energy, and I translated that into music, into sounds. So that's it.
Fantastic.
Scoring, when it was being scored, for those of you who had the experience of being in the control room, in the mixing room, when a picture's being scored and there are 90 musicians out in there, and they're playing their hearts out, and you will never hear music this brilliantly again. I mean, it's like being enveloped in sound. And I looked at Lalo, and I said, this is just amazing. He said, it's like seeing your little girl in her first party dress.
One more thing I have to about. I asked Bruce Lee, why did he want to leave? He says, well, I'm very happy, he said, that you are going to write the music, because in Hong Kong, in my dojo with Jim, when he practiced martial arts, he does it with a record. He used to do it with a record of Mission Impossible.
Well, we want to memorialize this a little bit by taking a picture. So if you guys will all stand up and we'll gather you together. And then we'll start the film. So just give us a second here. Thank you all for your patience.